Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, my name is Jess, and today we are making a copycat recipe for Aunt Liz's golden fried chicken from 50's Prime Time Café that's located in Disney's Hollywood Studios. If you've never been to 50's Prime Time Café, it is so much fun. The whole restaurant is basically themed like a 50's kitchen, and the waiters and waitresses are your cousins who serve you, and they tease you for your table manners, and you have to set the table and finish your vegetables and all of that fun stuff. But on top of the ambiance, the food is to die for. It is so special and comforting and delicious, and the fried chicken is one of our favorites. The recipe that I'm showing you today is a friend of the family's from the 50's, so it's pretty much as authentic as you can get, and it is so delicious, super crispy, flavorful, tender, and juicy. It is genuinely some of the best fried chicken I have ever had. And we're also going to be making my favorite mashed potato recipe. It is very simple, but I'm going to show you some tips and tricks that I learned in the restaurant and catering industry to make really good mashed potatoes that you can also freeze. So let's go get our aprons on and get started. So we are going to start by marinating our chicken. That's what makes this really tender and juicy. So I have 2.5 to 3 pounds of chicken pieces. I chose to do thighs and drums, but you could do chicken breast, chicken wings, whatever you'd like. And I have them in a Ziploc bag. And then I have 3 cups of milk that I'm adding 2 tablespoons of lemon juice to make buttermilk, but of course you could just use buttermilk as well. And then I am adding in 1/4 cup of hot sauce and 2 teaspoons of salt and 1 teaspoon of pepper. And we are just going to mix that and pour it over our chicken, and then we are going to marinate this in the refrigerator for at least 4 hours, even up to overnight is even better. So while our chicken is marinating, we are going to move on to the mashed potatoes. I have 5 pounds of gold potatoes here. I always make a really big batch, like I had said earlier, to freeze. So what I do is I cut all of the potatoes up and then I rinse them in cold water. That removes the excess starch that will make your mashed potatoes really gummy, and that's not what we want here. So once we do that, we're going to fill a pot with cold water and put the potatoes in. And we always like to start our potatoes in cold water because then the inside cooks just as fast as the outside does. If you throw the potatoes into boiling water, the outsides will get very mushy before the insides even have a chance to cook. And then I'm adding a few big pinches of salt, and we are going to bring this to a boil and cook the potatoes for about 10 to 15 minutes or until they're fork tender. And once they're tender, we're going to drain them and add 1 stick of butter that I cut into cubes. And we are going to mash that all together. We're also going to be adding milk to this. It's hard to get an exact measurement because it really depends on the potatoes you're using and how many potatoes, but it's usually somewhere between 1/2 cup to 1 cup. I start with 1/2 cup, mix it together, and see if I want the potatoes to be a little thinner, so it's really all about your preference. You could also use 1/2 and 1/2 or heavy cream if you'd prefer. And then I just add salt, pepper, and garlic powder to taste. And then they are ready to go. So now, as you can see here, I have a bowl of our mashed potatoes that we're going to use for this meal, but then I also have 2 extra containers that I'm putting in the freezer. So I spray the aluminum foil pans with a little cooking spray, add the potatoes, wrap them in some plastic wrap, and they will freeze for up to 3 months. When I'm ready to cook them, I'll take one out, bring it to room temperature, put a couple extra pats of butter on the top, and actually bake it for about 20 minutes at 350 degrees. And then you have amazing mashed potatoes in no time. So moving on to the dredge for our chicken. The recipe that I have from our family friend actually says to do this in a paper bag, which they did often back then. Now, of course, they're very hard to come by. We use reusable bags. So I'm using a Ziploc this time. You could also just use a bowl, but I think there's really something about shaking the chicken pieces in the dredge that makes it so good. So we have 3 cups of flour, 1/2 cup of cornstarch, and then for our seasoning, I have 1 tablespoon of salt, 1 tablespoon of paprika, 2 teaspoons of onion powder, 2 teaspoons of garlic powder, 1 teaspoon of oregano, 1 teaspoon of basil, 1 teaspoon of black pepper, and 1 teaspoon of cayenne. Now I know with the hot sauce and the cayenne you might think this will have some spice to it. For me, I never really noticed any sort of spice or kick to it at all. I think it just really adds to the flavor. But if you're very sensitive to spicy food, you can of course omit those spices. So then we are going to close the bag and mix it all together and take our chicken out of the refrigerator. And I like to do a couple of pieces at a time. You just want to take the chicken out of the marinade and let it drain off a little bit and throw it right into the bag. Now when we used to do this with a paper bag, I would throw all the chicken in at once and really shake it around, but we don't really have the room for that in this bag. So we will just do, like I said, 3 to 4 pieces at a time, and then we are going to take it over to the stove to fry. So now this is what I think makes it really special in 50s style, is we're using a cast iron pan and Crisco to fry in. If you don't want to use Crisco, that's absolutely no problem. You can just use vegetable oil, but I have about an inch of the Crisco melted in the pan, and it's heated to 350 degrees. And then we're just going to add 2 to 3 pieces into the pan at a time. And then we just want to cook the chicken about 7 minutes per side, or until the internal temperature reaches 165 degrees Fahrenheit. I always like to use a probe for this. It could be golden and beautiful on the outside and still raw on the inside, especially when you're using bone-in chicken. So definitely be sure to use a thermometer for that. I also still sometimes will even throw my chicken in the oven at 350 degrees for a couple of minutes just to ensure that it's fully done. So once the pieces are cooked, we're going to add them to a sheet pan that has a wire rack on it and keep frying our pieces until we are all done. If you want to keep the chicken pieces warm while you're still frying, you could set your oven to 250 degrees Fahrenheit and they will stay nice and crispy and hot. And there you have it, our beautiful golden, super crispy fried chicken, just like they serve at 50's Prime Time Café. This stuff literally hits the spot. It is that ultimate comfort food. It is so satisfying, so juicy and tender. I just can't get enough of it. I really hope you guys enjoyed making Aunt Liz's golden fried chicken with me today. If you did, please be sure to subscribe, as I am going to be making lots and lots of Disney recipes in the future. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.